In Shogun, Lord Toranaga is taking a long-term approach, but Episode 3 has provided more insight into his true strategy. Yoshi Toranaga, who is based on Tokugawa Ieyasu, has taken center stage in FX Shogun. Toranaga, portrayed by Hiroyuki Sanada as the head of the Shogun caste, is gradually posing a threat to the other regents by carefully considering each step he takes. In the first 2 Shogun episodes, Toranaga was practically Ishido's hostage. However, at the conclusion of Episode 3, he left Osaka and is now traveling to Edo. In light of Lady Curie's trip ruse and the urgent agreement struck with the Portuguese traders, Toranaga's plan to depart Osaka and head to Edo was fraught with danger. Toranaga and his men were nearly captured twice, even with the Abushige's exceedingly flexible allegiances, and had to fight their way to the coast. Nevertheless, the Lord of Kanto was safely traveling to Edo at the conclusion of Shogun Episode 3 and had informed the Council of Regents of his resignation. Lord Toranaga, the Shogun, was never formally identified as a prisoner, but he had been in Osaka since the start of the series. With the death of the Teleiko, Ishido, and the other regents were concerned that Toranaga was becoming too strong, enlarging his inner circle of associates and creating new potent coalitions through marriages. Ishido thinks that Lord Toranaga would eventually take action against the other regents, despite Yoshi's previous refusal to serve as the lone regent. The Edo era in Japan began in 1603, when Tokugawa Ieyasu established his shogunate in Edo. He was the first shogun of this period. Following the Battle of Sekigahara, in which adherents of Ishida Mitsunari fought on the opposing side, he solidified his position of power. The Lord of Kanto was taken into custody in the Osaka castle, following Ishido's announcement of the council's intention to remove Yoshi. But after John Blackthorne's assassination attempt, Toranaga realized it was no longer safe to stay there. With Blackthorne's entrance, Toranaga's enemy count had skyrocketed to include Ishido, the Christian lords, and Portuguese merchants. Toranaga made the decision to leave Osaka covertly for this reason. In order to do this, he planned a unique journey from Osaka to Ojiro for his spouse and a portion of his regiment. Before the group exited the palace, Toranaga took Lady Curie's place. It was a hazardous plan, but in the end, the Lord of Kanto was successfully smuggled out of the castle. Since they merely told Ishido beforehand, Lady Curie and the other members of the Toranaga family were not forbidden from leaving Osaka. Before the passengers left the castle, Lord Ishido and his men looked over them for any anomalies, but they found none because the switch had been carefully made when they were not looking. Lord Toranaga stepped down from the Council of Regents in order to thwart Ishido's attempt to remove him from office. The Council of Regents will not be able to take any formal action moving forward if Ishido disregards the resignation letter and moves through with the impeachment procedure. This is so because each of the Council's 5 members must vote on every decision the group makes. However, the impeachment process will end if Ishido accepts Toranaga's resignation in order to remove Yoshi's sway on the Council. Toranaga gained time thanks to a cunning plan. Of course, Toranaga's departure from Osaka is the only reason this was feasible. To ensure that the plan could proceed, Yoshi made sure that his resignation would only be presented to the Council of Regents after he and his regiment had left Ishido's lands as far as possible. It is unclear what Ishido and the Christian lords will do in light of Toranaga's pivotal action. It appears that fighting will soon start in Shogun if either side makes any more actions that could lead to war. In the second episode of Shogun, Lord Toranaga refused to let Portugal's Black Ship, a term the Japanese used to refer to the commercial ships the Portuguese used in the area for commerce, to depart Japan. This came about after Blackthorne told Toranaga about a Portuguese station in Macau that employed Ronin and served as a middleman in trade between China and Japan. Although Toranaga and the Portuguese did not get along, they managed to come to a mutually beneficial agreement at the conclusion of Shogun Episode 3. With Toranaga modeled after Tokugawa Ieyasu, a real historical figure, it's reasonable to assume that Hiroyuki Sanada's character in Shogun will soon take a more significant turn. Toranaga offered the priests and merchant 10,000 silver coins in exchange for boarding the Portuguese Black Ship and the assurance that they may depart Japan without facing any consequences. While the Portuguese would continue to do business as usual, Toranaga and his men would be able to sail as soon as possible in safety. The one thing about the term that Toranaga did not like was that it required John Blackthorne to stay behind. Luckily, the Anjin were able to maneuver a small boat alongside the local fishermen and break free of the Christian lord's blockade in time to return to Toranaga. In addition to ensuring John Blackthorne's safety at the end of Shogun Episode 3, Blackthorne's deed impressed Toranaga, who now recognizes the Anjin have important military expertise that can aid him and his soldiers in future battles. The English pilot, who Toranaga and others in his court had only termed the Barbarian, now enjoys the distinction of being called Hatamoto. This implies that John will be incorporated into the inner circle of the Lord of Kanto and become a highly esteemed vassal of Toranaga. John has been ordered by Toranaga to instruct his regiment in his maritime tactics and plans, many of which are unknown to the Japanese. Given that Portugal ought to support the three Christian lords of the Council of Regents going ahead, Toranaga must be prepared for a wide range of threats. Similarly, Toranaga can benefit from John's navigational skills in a way that Ishido cannot. The samurai are supposed to learn all of the Anjin's tricks and tactics, especially for naval fights. Yoshi is even receiving instruction from John in diving. Yoshi Toranaga declined the Taiko's offer to serve as the only regent. The Lord of Kanto believed that as the sole regent, he would be a prime target for the other lords' resentment. Additionally, this would endanger the heir's life. Even still, it's evident that Toranaga does aspire to be king despite his first denial. He is taking great care, though, to avoid needless killing in order to accomplish this purpose. With Toranaga modeled after Tokugawa Ieyasu, a real historical figure, it's reasonable to assume that Hiroyuki Sanada's character in Shogun will soon take a more significant turn.